Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning and Community Affairs Committee meeting of May 11th. And I'll call for a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. I'll call on our clerk, JP Newman, to give the rules of procedure for tonight.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Council. So as we do with our meetings, electronic meetings, I'd like to start with a roll call. So I'll start with Councillor Watton. Are you present tonight, Councillor Watton? Councillor Watton, are you there?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Guido.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Kieserbrink.
Here.
And Councillor Brown.
Present.
Thank you very much. I can confirm, Madam Mayor, that we have quorum for this meeting. Again, with a couple of the procedural matters, I'd ask everyone to please mute your mic while not talking. This will avoid any background noise that may occur where you are and will avoid any echo in the audio. Please use headphones if they're available to you. If you'd like to speak, please post a message in the chat. The Mayor will then call upon you when it's your turn. If you leave your computer, please let the Mayor know so that quorum can continue to be met. When moving or seconding a motion, please announce your name. Voting will be conducted by the Mayor calling each councillor's names individually and asking for their vote. Once your name is called, please unmute your mic and say in favour or against. The Mayor will then announce the result of the vote. This meeting is also being recorded and live streamed to the Township's YouTube channel. And further, I would just like to announce that members of staff present tonight include Manager of IT Adam DeBecke, Director of Public Works, Parks and Recreation Carol Coleman, Director of Finance and Treasurer Diane Valentin, Director of Development Services Kevin Heritage, Planner Nicola Alston, CAO Chief Administrative Officer Paul Allor, Manager of Planning Robin Prentice. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That concludes my opening statements.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and I'll now call for any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof.
Madam Mayor, it's Councillor Kieserbrink.
Yes.
I have a pecuniary interest for 9.1 and 11.1. Our family farm is leased by Youngfield Farms.
Okay, thank you. Any other disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We'll move on to.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I do have, would like to declare on the Youngfield report as well, as that my brother-in-law and sister live across the road.
Thank you very much. Any others? Okay, thank you. I'll call on announcements from council and staff. Any announcements from council? I have a couple then. Tomorrow is the Provincial Day of Action cleanup. And so I'll ask, hopefully it's a nice day tomorrow. And if you're out for your walk, if you would take gloves and protective equipment and a nice big green garbage bag and fill it up with litter on the streets, that would be so welcome for all of our residents and visitors. Also, this week is Nurses Week, and I'm wondering, Director Coleman, would we be able to light up the tree like we did for the Doctors' Day on Friday? Perhaps we could do it at 9 o'clock, just for consistency. Would that be able to happen?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we could do that on Friday.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Are there any other announcements from Council? Councillor McDougall?
Madam Mayor, yes, I have one. I believe it's on Tuesday from 1 until 2. The Port Perry Seniors Club is going to be giving away masks at the Utica Hall. I believe it's 2 per person. So that's Tuesday from 1 until 2.
Oh, that's good news. That's they've been very busy, haven't they?
Yes.
Councillor Watton, did I see that? Is that an announcement that you have written here, or was that?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. That was my declaration
Okay, that's good.
for disclosure.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements from staff, from council? Seeing none, Mr. CAO, I think you have an update for us.
Just a few, if you don't mind, with respect to COVID-19.
Yes.
Thank you. Firstly, the provincial emergency orders, the bucket of orders, approximately 30, they were extended to May the 19th. And in that bucket includes the prohibition of public events, the gathering of more than 5 people, closure of places of non-essential businesses, and of course the closure of the outdoor recreation amenities. That is May the 19th is the Tuesday after the long weekend. Further, the provincial declaration of emergency is in effect until tomorrow, May the 12th. We do expect a further extension of that emergency declaration. Over the last couple of days, there's been some interesting developments. The province loosened restrictions on business further, which is really good news. Friday, May the 8th, garden centers and nurseries are open to the public for in-store purchases. And Saturday, hardware stores and safety supply stores were open to the public for in-store purchases as well. Curbside pickups still were continuing if you wanted. And then today, May the 11th, of course, the retail stores with a storefront with a public entrance that open onto a street or an exterior sidewalk are permitted to operate with curbside pickup or delivery. Also, a great announcement was the provincial government partially opening up provincial parks and conservation areas for walking, hiking, cycling, and bird watching. A large majority, 520, were open today, with another about 115 on Friday. But please keep in mind, campgrounds, playgrounds, and beaches, they still remain closed. I want to let council know that staff are working on a COVID-19 municipal recovery and facility reopening plan. That's in development with the senior management team, and we will be sharing that plan with council in the coming weeks. Just update on our virtual advisory committee meetings. I had a very successful, I thought, virtual economic development committee meeting on Friday, and a successful heritage advisory committee meeting on May the 5th. Pardon me, that was a week Friday, May 1st, for the economic development meeting. We're in the process of trying to find a date. We have enough to run tourism advisory committee meeting, virtual meeting, just trying to find a suitable date. We've scheduled the first virtual housing advisory committee meeting, which is May the 14th, and the first virtual environmental advisory committee meeting, which will be on May the 13th this week. And now we're moving forward to test the remaining committees. Of course, tonight is our first virtual statutory public meeting, which is on the agenda for this evening. And we have 2 virtual committee of adjustments scheduled for May, on May the 19th and May the 26th. And just lastly, Madam Mayor, with respect to, bylaw update with respect to COVID-19, our bylaw officers reported that, the unseasonable weekend weather that we experienced seemed to have kept most people at home, and there were no physical distance or social gathering problems reported in our parks or parking lots, contrary to what we experienced during that very, very nice weekend we had last weekend. But things seem to be very well done this weekend. That's my update, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. Just further to the provincial parks opening up, I think were the public advised to go to one that is close by because there are no amenities open, like washrooms, rest stops, or whatever. They're not open. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's a very good point. So in keeping with the stay home or stay close to home directive, and because you're right, the parks do not include open washroom facilities. So they're asking if you're going to use one of the parks for recreation, as I mentioned, that you stick locally and not travel too far to one.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you for the update. I do have a question about the social distancing issue. I know that the one coffee place had some issues with people crowding in the parking lot, and I know that the owner is trying very hard to overcome that. How about any other businesses and any other issues that you can report on of compliance?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Generally speaking, once people are approached, and we're using an education, verbal persuasion to explain the need, there's quite willing compliance. We do have an issue that we're having difficulty getting the business to comply. It involves inadequate physical separation of the employees in the business and the customers, along with too many customers being let inside the business. Despite our plea to rectify the situation, we've had 4 complaints to our bylaw department and 1 directly to DRPS. In fact, DRPS has visited the site, and still the owner is unwilling to comply.
That's very unfortunate. What is our recourse for that, Mr. CAO?
Well, at this point, there is authority for the municipality to pass a bylaw to enforce the physical distancing directive. As you know, that's the 6 feet 2 meter directive. A bylaw would need to be passed by the municipality. Then fines could be issued and enforcement undertaken. It's just a shame that for one business we might need to pass or bring forward a bylaw of this type when we're getting compliance in the municipality through just regular persuasion and education.
Well, we all hope it doesn't come to that. I know that generally speaking throughout the region, businesses and people are being very receptive to the distancing issue. So hopefully that business owner will get on board. And I see that Councillor Brown has a question for you. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to the CAO. I know that Councillor Kiesebrink and myself for two, if not everybody, wants to know what's going on with fishing boats or boats that you can put in the lake. So if I can get some kind of an answer from you for the public who are wondering, that would be great. And thank you.
Mr. CAO?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, that seems to be a question a lot of people have on their mind. The weather's getting better. People want to get their boats in the water, and I'm hoping, like everyone else, is that there'll be a further loosening of the provincial emergency order in this regard. So currently, the emergency order, there's an emergency order with respect to our parks and the boat launches that it remains in effect to May the 19th. So if you wanted to put a boat in the water, there's no one stopping someone from boating. There's no one stopping anyone from putting a boat in that has a private boat launch or access to a private boat launch. But municipal boat launches and municipal parks are subject to the order that's in effect on May the 19th. Hopefully, we're really crossing our fingers with the long weekend coming that maybe there'll be an amendment to that order to loosen that up a little bit. Has everyone noticed the COVID positive numbers are coming down? In fact, there was only 5 in Durham today reported positive cases, which is fantastic news for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
If I
Councillor
could, Madam
Keyser-
Mayor?
Yep. Councillor Keyser-Brink, yes, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. I was just curious. I've received quite a few calls today and an email as well from the Williams Point Cottagers Association. I think part of the challenge is that people want to get their boats in the water, but they need to use like the Caesarea public boat launch. They need to use a launch to do that. And I think what is also creating confusion is in the Peterborough Examiner, there's an announcement that the City of Kawartha Lakes is reopening boat launches on May 14th, and they're reopening them to the public just ahead of the Victoria Day weekend. And the mayor there is advising that that these will help with the better weather and getting people outdoors to help. And now that the province is lifting some of the restrictions. And I guess I'm just wondering, how are other municipalities able to open their public boat launches? I don't think the public are just disputing, people fishing in groups on piers or things like that, but they do need to have access to the boat launch to get their boats in the water that they're supposedly allowed to do. So I'm just wondering how that works. If I could ask you further, Mr. CAO.
Certainly through you, yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Like, I can't speak, of course, for the City of Kawartha Lakes and their interpretation of the emergency order. However, we wanted to in Scugog, we wanted to make sure we were on solid ground with respect to the interpretation of the order concerning public boat launches, and sought a legal opinion from the Region of Durham Legal Department. And it's based on that advice that the emergency order applies to the municipal boat launches and the closure of municipal boat launches that we've been proceeding. There has not been a change to the order that would change that opinion. So as I was saying, we're just hopeful that very soon there'll be loosening or some flexibility built into the order to allow boaters to get their boat in the water using municipal boat launches. Thank you.
So everyone is encouraged to keep their ear to the radio or TV to listen for that announcement that maybe, just maybe, things might open up a little bit more this weekend. Are there any other questions for our CAO? Are there any other staff members that would like to give an announcement? Councillor McDougall, you have a question. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just trying to find my microphone. Thank you very, very much, Paul, or Mr. CAO, for taking the time to further explain this to us. Is the position because that the use of the boat launches in Scugog is not for essential travel purposes? I see that they're opening up in Kingston and in other areas as well.
Mr. CAO?
I think that as with marinas, if it was used to access your principal place of residence, that could be a reason. So I'm not sure in City of Kawartha Lakes if they have residents that may be returning from Florida and that's their principal place of residence. So that's why they're accessing the boat launch. I'm not sure, but that's the only thing I can think of. But as I mentioned, we sought legal advice. We felt that this was a matter that was going to be coming forward as the weather changed.
Certainly, thank you. Further through, Madam Mayor. So I'm assuming that as the weather gets better through this week, that perhaps there may be some changes in this policy, similar with the fishing policy, as I know Clarington is allowing fishing through their municipal areas as well. It can be decided, each municipality can make its own decisions in terms of whether it allows fishing or not. Is that fair to assume as well, Mr. CAO?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So firstly, we're, as I mentioned, all hopeful that because the positive COVID results are heading in the right direction, that we see further relaxation of these orders, and hopefully by the long weekend to allow some of the recreation components of the parks and boat launches to continue. I'm not aware of the Clarington situation. The order is written the same and should be applied to all Ontario. With my liaisoning I've done with my CAO group to date, we've had a common interpretation of the order. But I am on a call tomorrow, my biweekly call with my CAO counterparts, and I will ask the CAO from Clarington how they have interpreted this order to allow the fishing to occur in parks. As you know, right now, nothing precludes individuals from walking through a park and enjoying the park on a walk through. But after that, the recreational amenities of the park are closed, and it only speaks to walk-through access. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further, could you also inquire about, I know the City of Toronto is allowing the walk-through access to be able to place a kayak or canoe or paddleboard in the water as well. As the weather gets nicer, I'm sure the public will be looking forward to opportunities to be able to get onto the lake and well socially distanced, enjoy paddling opportunities that Lake Skugog might represent. I thank you for your patience and your leadership. This is certainly a difficult time for us all.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDougall. Are there any other questions of staff or any other announcements? Seeing none, we will move on to 9.1, public meetings, and Councillor Watton and Councillor Kiesebrink have a conflict on 9.1, which is the application under the Planning Act for Youngfields Farms. So
a difficult time for us all.
I beg your pardon? Thank you very much, Councillor McDougall. Are there any other questions of staff or any other announcements? Seeing none, we will move on to 9.1, public meetings, and Councillor Watton and Councillor Kiesebrink have a conflict on 9.1, which is the applications under the Planning Act for Youngfields Farms. And I have a statement that I have to read before the public meeting. This portion of the meeting has been set aside for a public meeting held under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Kristen Sotar of Youngfield Farms Limited for the property located at 4031 Regional Road 57. This next part is very important, so listen up. The purpose of this public meeting is to obtain the views and comments of the public. No decision will be made at this public meeting. It is important that the public express their views either in person or in writing prior to decisions being made by the Council of the Township of Scugog. The notification of this public meeting provided residents with options on how to be added to this meeting. However, written comments can still be submitted to the Township's planning staff at any time prior to the passing of the implementing bylaw. Everyone in this virtual public meeting has the opportunity to speak. Please be considerate of the acknowledged speaker by refraining from speaking into your microphone at the same time. While you may agree or disagree with the speaker, please refrain from audible responses and respect each speaker. To ensure that all those who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, speakers should limit their comments to 5 minutes and keep comments as brief and to the point as possible. Prior to speaking, please clearly state and spell your name and provide your property address for records purposes. You are encouraged to provide your comments in writing also so that staff can ensure that they are accurately recorded and appropriately considered. If you do not speak at this public meeting or provide written comments before Council makes a decision on this application, you may not be entitled to appeal Council's decision or be added as a party to a hearing by the local planning appeal tribunal. unless the tribunal determines there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you would like to be notified of the decision on these matters, please provide written notice of your desire to receive notice. The notice for this public meeting was given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. I will now ask Nicola Alston to provide information regarding the applications and an overview of the staff information report included in this agenda. Ms. Alston, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Nicola Alston, and I am a planner with the Township of Scugog. The purpose of this public meeting is to present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and obtain comments from council and the public. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment was received from Kristen Sutar on behalf of Youngfield Farms Limited for the property located at 4031 Regional Road 57. The application was deemed complete on February 24th, 2020. I will provide a brief overview of the application, and Ms. Sutar of Youngfield Farms is also available to answer any questions you may have. Next slide, please. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of Regional Road 57 and Nestleton Road and Emerson Lane. This proposed zoning amendment is a condition of an approved severance of a surplus farm dwelling. The purpose of the proposed amendment is to recognize the existing house on the severed parcel as a rural residential lot and to remove the permission for any further residential dwellings and any further severances. This application is related to two previously approved applications by the Region of Durham, including a Regional Official Plan Amendment and a Land Division application. The Regional Official Plan Amendment was approved on September 12, 2018 by the Region of Durham Council. The purpose of the Regional Official Plan Amendment was to permit the severance of a residential dwelling rendered surplus as a result of the consolidation of non-abutting farm parcels on lands designated prime agricultural areas. When Youngfield Farms Limited applied for the regional OPA, they did not own the adjacent parcel. During the process, it's my understanding that Youngfield Farms purchased the adjacent parcel to the east and decided to continue with the Regional Official Plan Amendment. The related Land Division application was approved by the Region's Land Division Committee on March 18, 2019. This application was appealed to the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal, or LPAT for short. The LPAT provided a decision on November 19, 2019, which dismissed the appeal and supported the severance subject to conditions. One of the conditions of approval is this zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. These lands are designated agricultural area, natural core area, and natural linkage area in the township's official plan. Both the agricultural area and natural linkage area permit agricultural uses. Existing agricultural operations are also permitted in the natural core areas. The severance policy of the agricultural designation within the Township of Scugog's official plan permits the severance of a resident surplus to a farming operation as a result of a farm consolidation, which residence was an existing use as of December 16, 2004, providing the retained farm is zoned to prohibit any further severance and the establishment of any residential dwelling. This policy is consistent with the provincial policy statement, growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Greenbelt Plan, and the Region of Durham's official plan. Next slide, please. The property is currently zoned environmental protection, agricultural, and agricultural with a holding provision. All these zones permit agricultural uses. Next slide, please. The majority of the severed parcel where the existing house is located is currently zoned environmental protection. The environmental protection zone will remain on this portion of the severed parcel, as this is one of the Kawartha Conservation Authority's conditions of land division. A portion of the severed parcel is proposed to be rezoned from agricultural holding to rural residential. Zoning Bylaw 1414 permits a single detached dwelling in the environmental protection zone on lots that were existing prior to the passing of Zoning Bylaw 1414. The intent of this regulation is to avoid the creation of any new lots that would facilitate additional dwellings within the EP zone. The larger retained parcel is proposed to be rezoned to prevent any further severances and the establishment of any residential dwellings on these lands. The proposed agricultural exception will also recognize the lot area of 37.28 hectares. No objections or concerns were identified by township staff or any other external agency. All regional conditions are being addressed through the land division application. Written comments have been received from 3 members of the public to date and have been forwarded to council prior to the meeting. 2 of these individuals will be participating in the public meeting, and the 3rd advised they did not wish to speak tonight. These comments and any additional comments received through tonight's public meeting will be addressed through staff's recommendation report regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Notice of this electronic public meeting was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, with notice provided to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property and advertised in the local newspapers and posted on the township's website. A sign has also been placed on the property to notify the public of the application. A future staff report will include an analysis of any comments received tonight, together with any subsequent written comments, and make recommendations on the application. Madam Mayor, that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Madam Mayor, are you there? You may be on mute.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much, Ms. Alston, for your presentation. Are there any questions from council? And I see Councillor Brown has one. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I've spent the last 4 or 5 days trying to figure this out, and I'm not sure that I understand the objections, and I'm not sure exactly what Youngfields Farms plans to do, other than, I think, sever off the property so that they can sell it. I'm not up to speed on all of the AG1 and EP3s and that, so forgive me. But my question for you, Nicola, is if there's no building on this property after this is dealt with, the adjacent property that they've just purchased, are they in a position where they can put a farmhouse there or buildings there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, that is correct. A single detached dwelling is permitted in that zone.
Further, Councillor Brown?
Not for the moment, no, thank you. That's good for now.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have one. Reading some of the letters and what I've heard on social media and so on, I just want to be very clear. Does the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Youngfields Farms Limited comply with the following planning documents: the provincial policy statement, the Greenbelt plan, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, Durham Regional Official Plan, and the Township of Scugog Official Plan? Ms. Alston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it does. And the difference in this application is that there has been a regional official plan amendment, as usually the adjacent parcel would be merged within the larger retained parcel.
Thank you. Do you have, and we are not making a decision tonight, do you have an idea how long it will take to come back with a recommendation? Roughly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am unsure of this. Both staff and the applicant will have a chance to address any questions and concerns and consolidate that within the report. So we'll probably have a better idea after tonight's meeting. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
That's fine, thank you. Councillor McDougall, do you have a question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for deciphering my scattered text there. Through to you, Nicola. A question I have is, in the correspondence we had received, there were some questions with regards to minimum distance of separation with the possibility of the building of a new barn on an adjacent property. If this severance is granted, is there a difference between building a barn if the dwelling is retained and if the dwelling is severed?
Ms. Alston?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, if a proposed livestock barn was being proposed, minimum distance separation 2 would apply. So a calculation would be based dependent on the number of animals and types of animals, and a distance would be applied. So there would be no difference because there's a minimum distance between the livestock barn and any residential dwelling. It's not to the lot line, and any dwelling that's in existence. And it does not matter whether or not it's zoned agricultural or rural residential. Thank you, Madam.
Anything further, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And further, another question I have is, should this severance be granted and somebody wanted to put these two parcels back together to be a full working farm with a residence, with the original residence and new barns, would that be possible in the future?
Ms. Alston?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, that would be a possibility if the same person or corporation owned the two parcels. They could merge it back. I should add the minimum distance separation 2 calculation does not apply to livestock barns on the same parcel as the owner's dwelling.
So
thank you.
Further?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, further. So even though that this parcel with the original dwelling that will be severed and the new parcel together are less than 100 acres, they could be merged back together to be a full agricultural parcel again.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that is correct. That could be a possibility should someone wish to do so.
Thank you. Further through you, Madam Mayor, a question. Will the report that comes back to council, will that address the questions that and comments that are received in the correspondence that the members of the public have today?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that is correct. All comments received, both verbal and written, will be addressed. I would ask that anyone who is speaking this evening also provide me comments in writing, as that will assist with the process. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see anything further, Councillor McDougall?
No, thank you very, very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Ross, your question was answered, as
yes,
I understand it. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will now ask Kristen Sotar of Youngfield Farms Limited to present information regarding this application on behalf of the applicant. Ms. Sotar, please unmute your microphone and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. My name is Kristen Sotar of Youngfield Farms. Firstly, thank you, Nicola, for your thorough review of the application and the excellent answers to the questions. I would just like to quickly reinforce the extensive process we've been through to get to this point. 3 years ago, we started, or 2.5 years ago, we started with the official plan amendment, which was brought to the region of Durham and approved. From there, we applied for consent through the Land Division Committee, and that was also approved. Due to an appeal, the consent decision was reassessed by the LPAT, where the original decision was upheld, bringing us here to the zoning bylaw amendment. As a farmer, it's not my role to create policy, it's my role to operate within policy, and that is exactly what we've done with this application. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and I'd be happy to address any other questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor McDougall, do you have a question?
No, not at this time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Sutar? Councillor Brown, is that you? Yes, please go ahead.
It is. Thank
Yep.
you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Ms. Sutar, thank you very much for being with us tonight. It's sort of the same question, I guess. I'm just wondering what's going to happen to the other parcel of land. Have you got plans for that you can let us in on? We understand that there'll be no building on the parcel that we're principally talking about, but the added parcel, the one to the, I guess it's to the west. Can you explain what may or may not be happening there, or what your plans are, or what the company's plans are?
Sutar?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Brown, are you referring to the retained portion or the severed portion or the adjacent land?
The adjacent land.
Sure. So the adjacent land right now is farmed as part of our current farming operation.
Okay, Councillor Brown?
Well, not exactly. I'm asking if you're aware of any plans for it. You're saying it's being farmed, and I respect that, but are there plans for that? Are you going to come back to the table with something else in terms of plans or buildings that you want looked after in the next little while, or do you have any idea at all, or is it just, as far as you know, agriculture for now and that's it?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, there are no plans at this time to build buildings on that property. We're in the business of growing crops, providing food, and that's what we plan to do with that adjacent property. Is we're not intending to build homes or barns on that property.
That's good. It's appropriate to
Thank
ask
you.
questions about the property in question, though, as the subject of this meeting. We have some members of the public who have requested to speak to this application, and I'd now like to call on Mr. John McDermott, planner for Dave Malcolm. Please unmute your microphone and state your address for the record, then go ahead with your presentation.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Drew and members of council. My name is John McDermott. I'm a registered professional planner and a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners, and I've been retained by Mr. Malcolm to assist him in the review and consideration of this application. My address is on file on letterhead on this, it's not, I'm sorry. It is 1550 Kingston Road, Post Office Box 1408, Pickering, Ontario, L1V 6W9. My apologies. Yes, so in proceeding with my submissions tonight, we looked at our understanding of the application, which has been outlined by Ms. Alston. We have some various technical issues relating to the matter, conformity with the official plan, compliance with the bylaw, and the effect of the requested amendments. And I think it's significant at the outset just to note that this is not simply a procedural matter, as suggested on the application. Given the iterative nature of the process followed by Youngfield Farms, the Council of the Township of Scugog is now charged with the responsibility of determining the appropriateness of the application in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the official plan for the Township of Scugog. As you've heard, the application is to fulfill a condition of a consent to allow for the severance of a dwelling deemed surplus by Youngfield Farms as a result of what is referred to as a consolidation of non-abutting, non-adjoining farm properties. Only a small portion of the property will actually be zoned rural residential, and the balance of the lands will be, the request is to modify the agricultural holding zone and the agricultural zone and the environmental protection zone to limit the use of the property so that a single detached dwelling cannot be erected. That's well understood. The problem here is what happens when you look at the application as submitted in terms of the technical merits of it. The bylaw is very clear, is that a single detached dwelling is only permitted on an existing on a lot in an environmental protection zone where it exists as of the date of passing of the bylaw. And similarly, the provisions of the agricultural holding zone say a similar thing in that only the existing use is permitted. The issue here is that if we look at how the courts and how the OMB, now the LPAT, have interpreted existing as of the date of passing of the bylaw, the zoning or the retention of the EP zoning where the house is located, that use would become non-conforming. And in fact, the lot which would not meet the minimum lot area requirement 40 hectares would become non-conforming as well. The application materials submitted to me did not indicate that they were seeking an amendment with respect to the area, as Ms. Alston has indicated. Ms. Alston has indicated that the lands are designated as agricultural, natural core, and natural linkage. The official plan is very specific in that it says that the minimum lot area will be 40.5 hectares, and that's where lands are being used for agricultural purposes. And in fact, in this application, the portion of land used for agricultural purposes will be in the order of about 25.7 hectares or 63 acres. And so while we recognize that a lot may be created surplus to a farm as a result of a consolidation within the spirit and intent of the official plan, there's no provision in the official plan which refers to or provides for the division of lands where the properties are non-abutting. And that's in the Region of Durham official plan, even though it refers to these instances, it does require an amendment to that document to allow for this to occur. And in the case of the official plan for the Township of Scugog, when it was written, the intent was to provide for the emphasis was upon protecting agricultural lands from fragmentation and the introduction of land uses not related to agriculture. So in this instance, the effect of the amendment is to create a non-farm related dwelling. And as a result of that, there are significant issues for the use of adjoining lands in terms of the erection of livestock housing facilities. I would also note that in Mr. Malcolm's detailed submission of May the 7th, that he outlined a number of concerns relating to the environmental issues, and given the significance of this area in terms of being a high aquifer vulnerability area and the designation as natural linkage and natural core areas, it would have been my thought that we would have had an environmental report dealing with those types of issues, particularly in view of the placement of a culvert and the filling of a portion of the stream corridor. However, that did not happen. And with respect to the provincial policy statement, it's important to note that development in its general sense is defined as the creation of a new lot as well as work subject to the provisions of the Drainage Act. So in other words, it's important that we look at both the severed and retained parcels from the viewpoint of defining what level of due diligence is required. And for those reasons, and given the policy set out in the official plan, coupled with the MDS calculations, it's our position that the application does not conform with the intent of the official plan. Ms. Alston has indicated the zoning of the property. I won't repeat that. However, what I would like to say is that if approved, the effect of this application is to create 3 non-farm residential properties adjacent to the northern limits of Region Road 57, opposite our clients' lands. And based on our discussions with Dr. Hoffman and a lady at the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, it has been confirmed that we require 145 meter separation from that dwelling that's being on the lot that's to be severed. This all but eliminates the ability of our client to erect a barn to house livestock on the south side of Region Road 57. And that again, we submit is contrary to the intent of the official plan, being to promote and strengthen the diversity of the local agricultural economy. And I think it's further significant to note that based on discussions with staff at the Regional Planning Department, at no time during consideration of the application for approval of the provisional consent, it's not an approved consent, it is provisional, to a land severance, the effect of introducing a further non-farm residential dwelling was not considered. So I think it's very important that we again stress that this is not simply a perfunctory task to fulfill a condition to consent to land severance. And I would say further that with respect to Ms. Alston's comments, my understanding of the minimum distance separation requirements, if the house on a farm had they not torn down the barn and had that farm have any livestock facility on it, the separation distance for a non-farm residential dwelling under MDS 1 and MDS 2 are quite different. In this
Mr.
instance,
McDermott, Mr.
Yes.
McDermott, can I ask you to wrap up? You've been well over 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, I've only got a couple points left.
Okay,
So
that's right.
the issue here then becomes the impact on adjoining properties. The official plan speaks to farm consolidations, not corporate mergers and acquisitions, and that is what we're dealing with here. So, and the final point, very briefly, is that as confirmed, the adjoining property to the east is entitled to a building permit. So what could happen here is that Youngfield Farms could come in and build a home on the adjoining property to the east, have severed this off, and we've got two separate lots capable of conveying title. And finally, the legislation, section 24.1, says that no bylaw passed for any purpose does not conform with the approved official plan. And for these reasons tonight, it's our submission that it does not conform with the official plan for the Township of Skewdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDermott, and I hope you have your written submission because you've made a lot of points there and we want to make sure that they're all addressed in the final report. Are there any questions from council for Mr. McDermott? Last call, any questions? Ian McDougall, sorry, Councillor McDougall, and then Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. McDermott. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask a question with regards to the minimum distance of separation. It's my understanding from the previous presentation we just had that the minimum distance of separation would not be adversely affected should the parcel be removed or retained. From the presentation you just gave, Mr. McDermott, it sounds like that is different, that should that parcel be retained as part of the original farm, that it has a significantly less amount of minimum distance of separation. Is that correct?
Based on my discussions with OMAFRA, that would be considered a farm-related dwelling. The MDS document makes specific reference to farm-related versus non-farm-related. So on that point, I do hold a somewhat different position in that if it continues as a farm and the lot is not created, the dwelling would not prevent Mr. Malcolm from building a farm on his property. That's my understanding. However, when we create a non-farm related dwelling, the rules change substantially. This becomes a type A land use, I believe, where the single detached dwelling has to be taken into consideration in terms of the possibility of erecting a barn on an adjoining property.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. Further, just a question. If that dwelling was retained as part of that farm, would that affect Youngfield's ability to farm that farm?
Not to my knowledge, through you, Madam Mayor. Not to my understanding, it would not prevent them from farming the property at all. It would be simply a residential farm-related dwelling. It would not preclude them from operating the farm, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anything further, Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, nothing more further. Thank you. I
have Councillor Brown and then Councillor Guido. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Just a question for Ms. Alston, and it's an offhand question. I don't need the exact number, but how many approvals were required in order to get this far, roughly, by the various agencies and governments and whatnot? Would you know?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the regional official plan amendment was applied for was approved in 2018. The land division through the region of Durham was applied for and approved in March 2019 and subsequently went to LPAT. So this is the third application. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for that. So it went to LPAT where I understand that it wasn't successful. The appeal wasn't successful. So the question is for Mr. McDermott. Everybody else, it seems, has signed off on this except you guys. Well, why do you figure it is that all of these protocols have been followed, all successfully and done properly, and yet you're still having objections to it?
Mr. McDermott?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Brown. I'd just like to go back to this issue. The region's official plan required an amendment, that's recognized. As I said in my submissions, based on my discussions with regional staff, they never turned their mind to the issue of the impact on adjoining properties, nor was Mr. Malcolm, I understand, aware that the regional OPA was in process. So that amendment was not appealed. Turning to the matter of the provisional consent, Mr. Malcolm did appeal that to the board. There's no question of that. It went to a hearing, and he had asked for an adjournment of that hearing in order that he could have both this matter and the matter of the provisional consent considered together. The board denied that request because that request for an adjournment was not provided to the board in an adequate timeline to allow the board to cancel the hearing. And unfortunately, due to, quite frankly, due to the fact that I was in a hearing for 6 days prior to this matter coming to the municipal board, or to LPAT for hearing, Mr. Malcolm did not have any evidence to provide in support of his position. So unfortunately, through a series of issues, there was no sort of checks and balances in the system. And I did have discussions with the region in terms of, had anybody looked at the effect of the severance, and the answer was clearly no, it hadn't. So the short answer to your question is that when one sits down and looks at the net effect, so to speak, of proceeding with this matter, basically what you're doing is creating arcs of influence if the application is approved, and the arcs of influence for a barn capable of housing 50 beef cattle is confirmed with OMAFRA at 145 meters. And when you look at the zoning and the designations applicable on the south side of Region Road 47, or Region Road 57, and you look at the existing presence of non-farm dwellings on the north side of the road, the effect is basically to all but preclude the issuance of a building permit on the Malcolm property for a barn. So that's why we are opposing, or Mr. Malcolm, as consultant on his behalf, making representations in opposition to this matter, because this is really the first time that we've had a fulsome discussion of the net effect of the application.
So thank you for that. And through you, Madam Mayor, if I can subsequent. So all of the boxes that needed to be checked were checked to the point where there was an appeal, which was turned away. You would recognize that, I would hope.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah. Yes.
That everybody has done their, as you say, due diligence on this matter, on the other side of the ledger, if you will. So you have to admit that all that needed to be looked after was looked after professionally and clinically. And I think if you would admit that, you might be a little further ahead, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I don't think there's an answer for that, but if you want to go ahead, Mr. McDermott.
I have no response to that.
Okay, thank you. I see that Councillor Guido's question was answered, so thank you for that. Ms. Alston, I'm sure that you've taken note of all of the questions and answers, and you will also address those in your report when it comes forward.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I don't have any other questions from council, so thank you very much, Mr. McDermott. And I will now call on Ms. Joanna Malcolm. Please unmute your microphone and state your address for the record, then go ahead with your presentation. Joanna Malcolm, unmute your microphone, please. We'll come back to Ms. Malcolm. Mr. Emerson, Mr. Mark Emerson.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, my name is Joanna Malcolm. I am a nurse, now retired, an artist and author. My studio and our farm sits directly across from the Youngfield farm in question. I am also an earth warrior and a part-time farmer. My husband David and I have lived on the Malcolm family multi-generational farm for 43 years, his family for over 200. Over the years, we have had livestock, did market gardening and maple syrup festivals, as well as woodlot management. I had prepared a much longer letter, which I hope most of you have read because it too is really important. But I have come to realize that as a local council, you only have so much power in regards to the decisions made at a higher level. The environmental industrial farming fight will be much longer and not for today. Our 60-acre farm runs parallel the whole distance to the farm in question. It continues parallel to the next farm, also owned by Youngfield. That farm is not in question, but I'm sure, as we have heard today, it will soon be in the near future. It all comes down to this quite simply. There is a rural residential home across from our farm that long ago was separated from its land. This home is owned by Mark Emerson. By allowing the severance of the farmhouse at 4031 Regional Road 57, the one in question, my husband and I, or our children, according to the MDS minimum distance separation formula, will never be able to grow or diversify our farm by building a barn. We can argue the merits of my previous letter, but ultimately it comes down to Scugog Council deciding if the severance of the house in question takes precedence over a neighbor's right to build a barn on our farm. It has always been one of my dreams to build a real barn, but life, work, and children always were priority. I am hoping now is the time. I would also like to set forward a proposal that Scugog Township Council present to Durham Region the necessity of protecting our family farms in Scugog. It is part of who we are. To stop the rubber stamping of land severance and surplus house removal and its impact, which sterilizes farms within the MDS formula. We need council to advocate to save our heritage barns, waterways, and environmentally protected lands so that Scugog can protect all of its citizens' rights, not just a few. Please, please stand up for the rights of Scugog at the regional level. I ask you to respectfully to vote no to this severance and to protect my family's right to build a barn on our family farm, whenever that may be. Youngfield's request for a house severance is no more important than my dream of a barn on our family farm. Vote no. Protect my rights of a farmer. Protect my dreams. That's it.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Are there any questions from council for Ms. Malcolm? No questions. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Malcolm. And now call on Mr. Mark Emerson. Please unmute your microphone and state your address for the record, then go ahead with your presentation. Mr. Emerson? Please unmute your microphone. Mr. Clerk, is Mr. Emerson still in the lobby waiting?
Yes, Madam Mayor, according to my list, he's in the meeting with us right now.
So, Mr. Emerson, are you there? Can you unmute your microphone, please, and state your address for the record, and then your presentation. Well, you must be having some technical difficulties, so I'll call on the next one, and we'll come back to you, Mr. Emerson. I'll call on Mr. John Powell. Please unmute your microphone and state your address for the record, and then go ahead with your presentation. Mr. Powell? Mr. Powell, unmute your microphone, please. Mr. Clerk, is Mr. Powell in the lobby waiting?
Yes, and he just unmuted his microphone.
Ah, very good. Mr. Powell? We can't hear you, Mr. Powell. Okay, while he's working out his technical difficulties, I see Mr. Emerson has worked out his technical difficulties. Mr. Emerson, can you
hear me now?
Mr. Emerson? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Good evening, Mark Emerson here. So first of all, I'll explain who I am.
Your address, please, Mr. Emerson.
Yeah, 4081 Regional Road 57. So the farmhouse immediately east of the subject property, and located in the property to the east. Sorry, I don't have a written statement, but I'll make my points.
That's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
So yeah, Mark Emerson, I'll just explain who I am. So the farmhouse that's being severed off was my grandparents' and my great-grandparents' farmhouse. I'm 58 years old, so I've been crawling around this land my whole life. And the farm immediately to the east, I inherited through my father about 4 years ago. The farm immediately to the east was farmed by my family going back to about 67. Where the house that I now own at 4081 was severed off at that time. So that's why this farm is not sterilized. This is why this farm can still have a building permit on it. So I inherited this farm through my father's trust, the Frank Wilton Emerson Trust, and I've retained the house and the approximately 2 acres that the house is on and plan to retire here. I'm living in the house full time now. So I understand the land and everything very well. I guess from my perspective, it kind of breaks my heart to see my neighbors across the road from each other having a different opinion about this. I'm about peace in our neighborhood and so forth and doing things within the law. It appears to me that the process that the Youngfield Farms have gone through to sever this farm, I know that was their intention from buying the farm from my cousins in the first place, was that, and they intended to follow that process. I don't understand this minimum distance thing, so I don't pretend to comment on that. But it appears to me that there's lots of land opposite my farmhouse where the minimum distance could be accomplished if a barn was required. But again, I don't comment on that. I just really, it breaks my heart to see the neighbors in opposition here. I'd like for us all to get along. From my perspective, the Youngfields have been wonderful neighbors. They've purchased our farmland. My father and I had trouble cleaning all the buckthorn off it over for many, many years, and it warms my heart to see it all back in good farming shape again. They've respected all of the natural boundaries in terms of the significant woods and so forth here. And, generally, as long as they're following all of the bylaws and so forth, as it seems in this particular case, I was before council a couple of years ago adding my workshop to this farm and going through all of that process and understand how complicated and how expensive it is to go through all these hearings and so forth. That I just like to say that I'm directly affected. I live here. This application doesn't affect whether the Youngfields put a cow barn right next to my house. I hope they don't, but that's not that's not up for that's not affected by this decision whatsoever. And just generally, I'd like to say that I don't like to see my neighbors difference of opinions here, and I understand there's a lot of passions, they run deep, but generally I would lend my support for this severance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emerson. Are there any questions from council for Mr. Emerson? I see none, so thank you very much for your presentation, and we have taken note of all of your concerns, and they will be addressed in the upcoming report. Thank you. Now, I'll call on Mr. John Powell. Hopefully you've got your technical difficulties resolved, so please unmute your microphone and state your address for the record, then go ahead with your presentation. Mr. Powell? Mr. Powell, unmute your microphone, please. I see that Mr. Clerk, he's in the lobby, is he?
Madam Mayor, it's Mr. Emerson speaking again. Just one thought. The technical difficulty I had, I was listening on YouTube before I was permitted into the room. And it was the starting with YouTube and then going to Teams that caused me the problem for my microphone not to work. So you might just want to put that in the future.
It was a timing issue then, was it?
No, it was because the YouTube had grabbed the microphone.
Oh, I see.
Right, and I was running the Teams application in parallel. I'm sorry, this isn't an IT lesson. I was just trying to be helpful.
Thank you very much. That is helpful. Well,
Madam Mayor, Mr. Powell just left the meeting. He may try and reconnect, but I just advise that he did just leave our meeting just now.
Okay.
So what I did was I shut down YouTube and I shut down Teams, then I rejoined and everything worked okay.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, if Mr. Powell comes back on, do you think you could get that message to him to shut off his YouTube?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, actually, Mr. Powell did email me, and I did email him back already with some suggestions of that nature. But it does seem that he has left now, and I'm not sure if he's going to retry, but yeah, hold on, here he is. He's trying to get back in now. He should be in the meeting with us now.
Hello.
Okay. Mr. Powell, yes. Could you just state your... Mr. Powell?
John Powell, 3140 Highway 7A, Blackstock.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Emerson, for that tip. I turned off YouTube and worked great. I support the application to rezone. I made 4 points here. I entirely applaud people's concern for the environment, wetlands, trees, wildlife. I must admit that I've been around for 46 years here in Scugog, so compared to Mr. Malcolm and Mr. Emerson, I'm a newcomer. But clearly 50 acre or even 200 acre farm lots are not sustainable in today's agriculture, and it would be delusional in my view to even think that you could have anything other than a hobby farm that you would have to support for a 50 acre farm or a 200 acre farm or whatever. So tip of the hat to Youngfields for doing what they're doing, and the other farmers in this area that work so hard to make a living doing what is really important to all of us. I'm as concerned as anyone about trees and their value, but when I read about people's concern about knocking down hedgerows, which are mainly thorn trees that are a scourge on the environment and grow up way too fast, I really can't get too upset about it. So my final question, it sort of came out of listening to Mr. Malcolm's planner make a very good presentation. Is there something sinister here that the Youngfields are trying to pull off at selling a house or whatever? I don't get it. So frankly, sounds like there are a bunch of neighbors who are not happy with the situation. And I've tried to inform myself as best I could before I dove into this particular meeting, because I don't have a dog in the hunt. I'm not a farmer, but I sure respect the process and applaud town council and Mayor Drew for the work they're doing. And quite frankly, I was really impressed to hear Mr. Emerson. I didn't expect to hear that, and good for him. And hopefully everybody can resolve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Powell. Are there any questions for Mr. Powell? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Now, thank you for attending, everyone, and providing your input into this statutory public information meeting. At this point, I'd like to ask if the proponent has any quick answers. Like, there's been a number of questions and concerns. If there is something that you could answer quickly, that would be very helpful if you could do that. Ms. Sutar?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I would just like to reinforce the research that I had done and that Ms. Alston had shared, that I think we're actually in a very good situation, because if the primary concern with the severance has to do with the minimum distance separation formula, the rezoning of this home does not impact the minimum distance separation whatsoever. Houses are grouped into either type A or type B. Type A houses are those that which are in the countryside, and type B houses are those which are in villages and towns. This house is a type A dwelling regardless of the zoning, therefore the separation required is fixed. The distance between it and a potential neighboring barn is predefined, and the decision made on this application will have no bearing on the Malcolms or anyone else's ability to build a barn, because zoning does not change the separation calculation. So I think despite the appearance of quite a conflict, I think in fact the conflict may not be so serious, because I don't think the decision that we make on this zoning change will have any impact on Mr. Malcolm's ability to, and Mrs. Malcolm's ability to build a barn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sutar. Ms. Alston, is there anything that you'd like to wrap up with?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing further at this time.
I think you've got all your notes from the public meeting?
I do, thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes this public portion of the meeting tonight. And I'll bring forward the report, which is next on the agenda, number 11.1. And again, Councillor Watton and Councillor Kiesebrink have declared an interest. Could I have someone make the motion to on the recommendation, please?
Councillor Ross makes a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Seconder?
Councillor Brown will second that.
Thank you. And I'll call the vote. Councillor Watton has declared. Councillor McDougall?
In favor?
Councillor Brown?
In favor?
Councillor Guido?
In favor.
Councillor Ross?
In favor.
And Councillor Kiesebrink has declared an interest. That motion is carried. The recommendation was that the report DEB 2020-017 entitled Bylaw Amendment Application, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Z03-2020 Youngfield Farms Limited, 4031 Regional Road 57, part of Lot 17, Concession 9, Ward 4, information report be received, and that staff report back to council with a recommendation on this application at the earliest opportunity. Thank you very much. That motion is carried. We'll move on now to 11.2 on page 16 of your agenda. And do I have a mover, please?
Councillor Guido will move.
Councillor McDougall will second.
Thank you. Let's see. I got to get the page number myself. Okay, thank you. This is on the temporary use zoning bylaw amendment application for Big Brothers Big Sisters of North Durham. And it's a recommendation report by Manager of Planning, Robin Prentice. I'm not sure if she's with us tonight, but the motion has been made and it's up there on the screen for you. And I'll call the question. Councillor Brown?
In favor?
Excuse me. Sorry,
I'm
excuse
sorry.
me, Madam Mayor. Can we have any questions on this?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure exactly who to direct this question to. I noted that the region of Durham was in favor of this temporary rezoning, but they did include a condition. Sorry, I'm paging down to it. The condition is that the facility it is to be used during after regular hours. Okay. After regular hours of the manufacturing. Is that correct? Is that how this reads?
Who do I call on for that? Mr. Heritage? Director Heritage?
Robin, are you there?
Yes, I am. Robin
Okay.
Prentice here, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct. They don't want concerts held at the same time as the industrial uses in.
Oh, thank you. Councillor McDougall, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McDougall, any other questions?
No, that's
Okay.
it at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question in regards to point 4 in regards to the development charge deferral agreement. If this hall after the 3-year agreement is renegotiated, will the DCs be charged at that time? And to what extent can this be renegotiated before it becomes a permanent fixture?
Robin?
So through you, Madam Mayor. So if after the 3 years they would like to extend that permission, they would have to apply again for either another temporary use, or they'd have to apply for a full zoning bylaw amendment. And we could review and negotiate the terms of any DCs at that time, depending on how they should choose to move forward.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you. And if I may follow up, is
Yep.
this a standard practice to waive DCs because it's temporary, or is this in regards to a charitable nature of it?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Oh, through you, Madam Mayor. It's a typical for temporary uses. You don't usually apply development charges for a use that's only going to be in place for 3 years. You would look at something similar to this for a temporary use.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions, anyone? Okay, seeing none, now we'll call the vote. Councillor Brown.
I am in favor.
Sorry, Mayor Drew, I did have a question, but I couldn't type it quick enough.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering if, I don't know if Chief Bernie is here, mentioned that this fire safety plan for the building would need to be updated. I was just curious a little bit of information about that.
Ms. Prentice, do you have the answer to that? Or Mr. CAO?
If the chief is on the line and would like to speak to it, that's fine. But it's just because it's a different assembly use, so they just have to revise their plan to ensure that they know their exits and whatnot for the different types and the different assembly of people in the building. But they can work that out with emergency services.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll call the vote again. Councillor Brown?
In favor.
Councillor Guido?
In favor.
Councillor Ross?
In favor.
Councillor Kiesebrink?
In favor?
And Councillor Watton?
In favor.
Thank you. And that
In
motion-
favor.
Did I miss you? Sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I included myself at the end.
Thank you. These technical things are really getting to me. Okay, that is carried, and we'll move on to 11.3, which is the zoning bylaw amendment. And is it up there now? Yes, it is. It's up there now. Do I have a mover, please?
I'll move that. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Okay, thank you. Seconder?
Councillor Ross to second.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Councillor Guido.
In favor.
Councillor Ross.
In favor.
Councillor Kiesebrink.
In favor.
Councillor Watton.
In favor.
Councillor McDougall.
In favor, Madam Mayor.
And Councillor Brown.
In favor.
I think I got everybody that time. That motion is carried. Moving to 11.4, North Durham United Football Club on page 37. and it is up on the screen now. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move that, Madam Mayor. Councillor Watton.
Thank you.
Councillor
Seconder?
McDougall, I'll second that.
Thank you. Questions or comments? This is good news for the soccer club. Seeing no questions, I'll call the question. Councillor Ross.
In favor.
Councillor Kiesebrink.
In favor.
Councillor Watton.
In favor.
Councillor McDougall.
In favor.
Councillor Brown.
In favor.
And Councillor Guido.
In favor.
Thank you. I think I got everybody, and that is carried. Thank you very much. 11.5, operating budget surplus. That is on page 45, and it is up on the screen for you. Could I have a mover, please, for the recommendation?
Councillor McDougall, I'll move that.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor. Wilma Watton.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Ross, you had a question, I think. Did you
Yes, I
want
do.
to express it? Yeah, go ahead.
If I may. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Directed towards Director Valentin. And on page 46, point 2 in the discussion section, just talks about the hydro reserve. Can you just explain to me, is the hydro reserve still relevant, and why do we still have a hydro reserve?
Director Valentin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the hydro reserve was established when the Port Perry Hydro was sold, and Mayor Drew can correct me if I'm wrong. I wasn't here at the time, but it was established at that time to identify the funds that were received. And it's been utilized by council over the years. It's a discretionary reserve that was set up. It's a discretionary reserve, which means that it can be used at council's discretion. So it was used, I believe, to purchase the old mill at the time, and it was used just recently for our LED streetlight conversion. What we're proposing here and what was identified in the report that in 2017, when the LED streetlight conversion project was coming forward, it was identified as a funding source, the hydro reserve, and it was mentioned in that report that funds be redirected back to replenish the hydro reserve. So the hydro reserve is used at council's discretion, and I guess I leave that up to council at this point. It is a funding source for other avenues or other capital projects as well. So it is somewhat still relevant.
The only thing that I would add is that there's always the plan to pay it back, so that you always have that reserve available to in the future to fund other such projects. That's the only thing that I would add. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Madam Mayor. In the recommendation states 75% to go back to the hydro reserve, and you're looking for council direction going forward. What does it look like if the council direction at this time is a 50-50 split or 100% in one direction or the other? Can you just state why we're looking at 75-25 at this point?
Director?
Sure, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Councillor Ross. So again, going back to the report from 2017, when the LED streetlight conversion project was brought forward, we had two options, or the township had two options. One was to take a loan out from the Incentive Energy IESO. I can't recall what the last two acronyms are. We had that option to take out funding from there or utilize our own to self-fund this project. The hydro reserve being utility and the streetlight conversion having to do with utility, they seem to fit together, and that's the council direction. Within that report, and as part of the township paying for this project up front, it's stipulated in the report that the funds, the savings that would be recognized through the streetlight program, partial savings could be used to replenish the reserve, and the other and another part could be used to perhaps have savings through the tax levy by having a lower budget for that line item. And looking at this and looking at the payback, it was decided. I had several discussions with senior management on the percentage, and in order to pay it back and to recognize some of the savings, I thought it was appropriate to do 75%. Of course, it's up to council's discretion what percentage. What I'm looking for here is direction so that in subsequent years, I don't have to come back and get direction each time, that I can just move forward with that direction and then budget appropriately.
Thank you. Would it be fair to say that, Director, that the other 25% would be considered to lower the tax burden on the to the taxpayers, or reduce the levy?
That's the intent, that we would look at that street lighting budget line item and reduce it 25% of the savings that we're recognizing.
Okay, thank you. Further, Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further, I guess, to that point in regards to the tax levy, my understanding is not a guaranteed reduction in tax levy, but maybe you could speak to that, please.
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. So the tax levy is not just one line item. So what we would propose, if council does give us this direction, is that we would look at that street lighting line item and the current budget that it's at, take 25% of the savings that we're recognizing and reduce that line item. That may or may not trickle down to the bottom line, but that is the intent, that, as staff review the budget annually, we do a line by line review, and that would be one of the line items then that we would look at the savings that have been recognized and take a portion of that and take that budget line item down by that appropriate amount.
Okay, thank you. If I may, just one last question, just for clarification. So we're looking at, you've been given direction by previous council that the streetlight program go back into the hydro reserves, and in addition, also been given vague identification that some of this should go back to, in order to help pay the tax levy, or to reduce the tax levy. Is that correct? And we're just sorting out 75-25 at this time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there was no actual council direction. It was through a contract award report that it was suggested. So I'm bringing it forward now to get council's direction on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just finding my microphone here. A question inside this report, it talked about, budgeting with regards to emergency planning. Would that number be significantly different in 2020?
Director?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The budget line item, I'm not sure, because we look at it on an annual basis. We look at prior 3-year actuals. We would look at what is anticipated moving forward. I can tell you that through this pandemic right now, we are identifying and coding invoices, COVID-related invoices. We are identifying them and keeping them separate. In the case that the province or the federal government comes up with a financing strategy to help pay municipalities. Seen this in other instances where there is relief funding through an emergency. So we don't know, we haven't been provided that direction yet, but we are preparing for that. At this point, we're not coding everything into that line item, and I don't know moving forward. As I said, it would depend on what is expected moving forward, whether we need to budget more in that line item or not.
Very good. Further through you, Madam Mayor, a question with regards to, there's an operating surplus summary on page 53. I think it's summarized a bit in the report above. It talks about transfers to reserves and then our total expenditures. It appears that our 2019 budget and our 2019 actuals are about $1 million in difference. Perhaps you could speak to that difference in that $1 million. Director Valentin, thank you.
Director?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Councillor McDougall. So this is actually due to an accounting change brought on by our auditors. So the significant amount, the variance that you're alluding to, has to do mainly with the OLG revenue that we received. Now, we've been receiving funds from the casino since, I think, 2005. And the way that it's been handled is the money would come in and it would get directed to reserves. We do still do that, or we still are maintaining that practice. However, because it's a revenue coming in, we do need to recognize it through our income statement. And that was brought to our attention last year through the audit. However, our budget had already been prepared when that audit was going through. So that's why the figures seem, there are significant variances. We've made an adjustment to the 2020 budget. It does not affect the bottom line as the revenues come in under the revenue line and they go out through the transfers to reserves. So we're still allocating to them to the same place, but we just had to recognize it for accounting purposes through the income statement, and that's why you see such large variances. There may still be variances next year, only because of the nature of some of the revenues that we receive. For instance, we have received cash in lieu of trees, and the cash in lieu of trees that comes in through subdivisions, we need to record it as revenue and then transfer it out to the reserves to be utilized at a later time. I won't know those. We don't actually know what may come through in any planning applications. So there may still be some variances in future years, but it should be reduced by close to $1 million next year.
Further, Councillor McDougall?
Very good. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one quick question that Councillor Angus Ross referred to the hydro account and the purchasing of the bill. Will any of the funds, should the Eld Mill successfully be rented out, or if we ever one day decided we didn't want to own it anymore, would that go back into the hydro reserves? Is that where that would land?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any specific direction right now that would come forward. If that was the case and council did wish it to be directed that way, that could happen. Currently, with the sale of land and such, our reserve fund policy does put that into our MP reserve, municipal projects reserve.
Okay, so that'll be a decision that we make sometime in the future, if ever. Correct?
Yes.
Anything further, Councillor McDougall?
No, that's all. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we can scroll to page 48 of our council agenda, my question will be for Director Valentin in regards to a surplus and a deficit that we have. The first item is general expenses right there. Expenses related to litigation costs incurred for Greenbank Airport. And then on the subsequent page, on page 49, when it's under, I believe it's professional services, it indicates that there is a surplus. Yes, under professional services, there is lower legal expenditures. Are these different account line items, and do we consider litigation differently than legal expenditures?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a great question. The line item on under general expense, that has been there for as long as the Greenbank Airport litigation has started. So that's been that line item. It did not flow under in the grouping of the categories. For ease, I could move that in future years if that makes it easier. was hoping this would go away, but we don't budget for this because we really don't know. It is unpredictable, but because of the general expense line item, that's why it fits under the administration. But you're right, it probably should have been under the professional services, and that can be moved.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to the director, thank you. Yeah, if that could be moved, it just would make greater sense in reading it. I had to scroll back and forth to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding what the line items were. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, further to Councillor Guido's question, is there any advantage to keeping the Greenbank Airport expenses separate, given that it's an unusual situation and given the fact that the professional fees that are the sort of normal run-of-the-mill budget fees, it allows for us to see that, in fact, those fees are being managed in an efficient way. Whereas if that line item is always inflated with Greenbank matters, I'm just asking a question if there's any advantage to keeping them separate for that reason only.
Okay, Director.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I would still keep them separate. I would just group it, take it out of administration expense and put it under professional. But I would still maintain the separation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. To the recommendation. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Agree.
Thank you. Councillor Watton.
In favor.
Councillor McDougall.
In favor.
Councillor Brown.
In favor.
Councillor Guido.
In favor. Councillor
Ross.
In favor.
Thank you very much. That is carried. We'll move now to correspondence 12.1, and Councillor Watton, you asked for this to be on the agenda, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted it to come to the agenda just for consideration, since the cannabis operations are becoming fairly extensive within our municipality, and I know that there are odors in and light nuisances that are impacting some people, and as they expand, we also don't have any way really to try and have some control over this. But in researching further, I know that when talking to the region, they also do not have any policy or bylaw to deal with this, but they have suggested that the Ministry of the Environment does have some, and that OMAFRA has some, but ultimately there aren't really any clear regulations or guidelines that even should we wish to create a bylaw to regulate some of this, we don't have any guidelines to go by. I am not by any means suggesting that we have resources or staff to create a bylaw at this point in time, but based on this letter, I would like to just present a simple motion that would be taking only the section B of the correspondence, which says that the mayor be directed on behalf of the township of Scugog to write to the relevant federal governments, and I would add provincial governments here, asking them to regulate and enforce odor and lighting nuisances related to cannabis operations at this point. I just don't want it to get lost, and become an issue and we haven't even had any thoughts about it. So that's kind of my purpose in wanting to have it brought forward and allow the council of the day to have some discussion on it. But as I said, my motion would be simply that you would be contacting the federal and provincial governments asking for regulation and enforcement of odor and lighting nuisances. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Ross wishes to second that motion. Do I have any questions or comments on the motion and the letter?
Madam Mayor, Councillor
Ross,
Watton, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Watton for bringing this to the attention of Council. I agree with the declaration that has been presented by Councillor Watton. The greater regulation is needed for odor and lighting in the cannabis industry. My concern with the entire declaration is that at no point should cannabis farmers be penalized in Scugog Township, but not in neighboring municipalities. A fair, comprehensive provincial or federal regulation is required. There are concerns about cannabis production on Scugog Island, and as we all know, throughout the township. But it's an industry-led education and regulation that is required. If this is done in an ad hoc manner, with only some municipalities enforcing odor bylaws, then what we end up is a patchwork throughout the province, with our cannabis farmers at a disadvantage in Scugog because of greater regulations in neighboring municipalities. So beyond this, the cannabis industry needs to become good corporate citizens throughout the province. And once again, I want to thank Councillor Watton for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Excellent comments. And Councillor Kiesebrink, you have a question or a comment? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ross stated everything quite fully and succinctly.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Councillor Watton.
In favor.
Councillor McDougall.
In favor.
Councillor Brown.
In favor.
Councillor Guido.
In favor.
Councillor Ross.
In favor.
And Councillor Kiesebrink.
In favor.
Thank you very much. Is there any other new business for the meeting tonight? Seeing none, I'll call for a question to, I'll call the question to adjourn, please, or I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And a seconder?
Councillor Brown?
Councillor Kiesebrink?
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor, Councillor McDougall?
In favor.
Councillor Brown?
In favor.
Councillor Guido?
In favor.
Councillor Ross?
In favor.
Councillor Kiesebrink?
In favor.
And Councillor Watton?
In favor.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to staff for excellent reports, and thank you to council. I think most, if not all of you, asked your questions ahead of time, and with staff working from home, it's very much appreciated, so they can have the answers ready for you for tonight. So thank you, everyone, and good night.